again, welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, John Obolewski, and our guest. John, how are you today?
Hey, Jim, I'm doing really well. It was nice visiting with you for about 10 minutes before we started the recording today. Just appreciate your friendship.
Yeah, right back at you. I noticed there's a third face on if you're watching, I always feel like I'm part of the Brady Bunch on these Zoom calls, but somewhere below us in my screen, there's Jan or Marcia. I can't tell. Why don't you introduce our guest here today?
So we have a special guest with us today, Jim, Pastor Chad Deerman. Chad pastors a wonderful church in West Branch, Michigan, and he has been a friend of mine, I think, for about 8 years now. And it's just been a great friendship, a mutually beneficial relationship in many, many ways. We've learned from each other and helped each other on a lot of things. And he is just one of the finest leaders that I know, and I wanted him to be on our podcast.
Right. So Chad, welcome. Glad that you're here, and thanks for sharing some time. You know what we do here, because you're a listener as well, as we try to find somebody that's doing something pretty extraordinary but not so extraordinary that no one else can do it but them. So we're grateful that you don't juggle chainsaws. We'd be amazed by that, but we couldn't duplicate it. But your leadership, we first met, it was at a superintendent's coaching panel. Remember that? Probably
I do.
15 years ago or something.
Yeah, that was under a totally different superintendent. And back when we didn't have the grays, but I
had a full hawk. Now I have a no hawk. I had a full hawk then. It was kind of cool, So, but thanks for joining us. See, just by way of getting to know your spiritual story, I think before you tell us what you know, maybe you could take a minute and tell us who you are, where you came from spiritually, and help us to kind of connect with you that way.
Sure. Yeah, what a joy it is to be with you guys. I appreciate this opportunity. And, I was saved at the age of 22 years of age. And of course, I was in a very dark place, like most of us, if not all of us. But I had a praying mother, and my life was radically changed by the power of the gospel. And this was during a very, very dark time for me. I definitely was lost very much in drugs, alcohol. I was one of those kind of stories, was very much a partier, and I needed God. And I just really got to a point, I was so desperate and so lost that I cried out to the Lord for help, and he responded. And my life was radically transformed. And really overnight, and it shocked the people around me. The people who knew me the best were just absolutely shocked at the transformation. And I stopped the drugs and the alcohol and I smoked cigarettes. I mean, everything just stopped for me within 24 hours. And so, I mean, God really did an amazing miracle in my life. And so
tell us a little bit about how did you convince your mother, right? She's known you for 22 years, and she's watched what you've gone through, to come home and say, guess what? How did that go?
Well, I tell you, when I went, I actually locked myself in their house, and they knew that there was a change, because I cut off every party friend I had. I just locked myself in their house for like 3 weeks. All I did was read my Bible and pray, and just asked a lot of questions about Christ. My mom really, the first night, that night that I got saved, I actually ran into her room. She was still sleeping the next morning. And I ran in there, busted in her room, and I said, Mom, you wouldn't believe it. I'm saved. And she just kind of she looked at me like, are you sure?
Yeah.
I said, yes. And she believed me, because I absolutely, I didn't want to go anywhere. I just wanted to stay there, learn as much about Christ as I can. And that's when they knew something miraculous is going on here. And so God's really done a miracle in my life.
Yeah. Thank God for praying mothers, man.
Amen. Yeah.
Chad, that's such a great story. I've heard you tell that story before, and actually, I got goosebumps again when you were telling me it. That story never gets old. for me, and so grateful for what God did at age 22 in your life. Chad, so you came to Christ at 22. How did you begin to sense a call to ministry, a pastoral ministry? Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Because we're always interested to know how God does that, because he operates differently in people's lives. How did that work for you? How did that happen?
Yeah, I right after that transformation, I found a new friend. His name was Jesus. And I felt God calling me into really going to Bible school. So I went to Southwestern Assemblies of God University, and it was there at school that I began to feel that call on my heart. And I wanted to spend the rest of my life telling people about Jesus Christ. And so I went into the pastoral ministries degree, got a bachelor's degree. That's where I met my wife, Angie. They're in the Dallas area. And so I've been preaching the gospel the last 25 years. And so that's really where it started for me, was where I really began to feel, I got filled with the Holy Spirit. And, my life has never been the same.
So Chad, would you describe it as more of a gradual call than a dramatic call to ministry? Just curious.
Yeah, for me, it felt, I knew pretty early, my freshman year of college. I knew I was on a straight line. So I actually started that degree year one of being a pastor.
Okay.
And I have been on that. A lot of people will go into one field and then they kind of change their mind and say, no, I'm going to try this degree. I wasn't that way. I started my freshman year to want to be a pastor, and I have been on this course ever since.
Awesome. Beautiful. So now you're pastoring what I consider to be one of the better churches I've ever known. Not just that I know, but that I've ever known. It is a lively, diverse, and growing congregation. And when I say that, I think people are imagining, okay, so he's in Novi, he's in Farmington Hills, you're in West Branch. Now, if you're listening right now, you don't know where West Branch is, don't feel bad about that, because I think West Branch's claim to fame is it's off of I-75 between some place that you might have heard of and some other place you might have heard of. And you probably have never heard of West Branch. So accomplishing what you're accomplishing, first of all, it's a wonderful thing to see what's happening, because it proves the gospel works no matter where it is.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about your current assignment, the demographics, how long you've been there, what's going on at your church there.
Right. Well, when I first came to West Branch, as a church we had 19 senior adults, and we were in this little residential area. The church looked like a glorified house. And had a cross on it. We could just it was small.
Yeah. Difference between a mobile home and a church is the cross on top of it, buddy. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I first came on the property, I'm looking around like, God, you've got to be kidding me, but I felt it. I sensed that I was to be here. And we've been here 20 years now in January. It was 20 years. And we started with 19 people. We're running about 800 now. And so God has really blessed through these last 20 years. And, it's really in the last few years since COVID that I feel like I'm pastoring a completely different church. So many new people, even recently here, so many new young families are coming in. We are experiencing wonderful growth, and there is like a great awakening that is happening, and people are really hungry for God. And we have recently hired I got a full staff here, but we've hired 3 interns. And we have a worship pastor who's an intern, a young adults pastor, and then a youth pastor. All of them are in their 20s, and they're doing an incredible job bringing in all these new individuals, these new families. And Angie and I really feel God asking us to train and raise up the next generation of staff and leaders. We also just purchased a new facility just down the road here We just purchased a new facility that's going to be, it's very multi-purpose. I believe it's about 8,000 square foot. But it will be specifically for this next gen ministry. And so we now have growing room. And as the church is really growing, again, we're wanting to kind of break through that 1,000 mark, we've been about 800 people. We're ready to break through that 1,000. And so we're really working hard here at the church to develop structure, systems, hospitality. The three big ones we're working on right now is hospitality, volunteers, and leadership. Also, we're looking to build a growth track that will move people into ministry. And so, lots going on. It's exciting. Yeah. It's exciting to just be a part of what God's doing.
What's the population of West Branch?
We're about 2,000 in the town, but the surrounding area, I'd say we have about access to about 10,000.
Yeah.
In our county is 25. Or a little less than 25, but Gladwin County is about 25.
Yeah.
So we have people traveling in from Gladwin, Roscommon, Houghton Lake.
Yeah.
So it does
funny.
It's got huge potential.
I know there's people that listen that live in Southern California to this podcast. They cannot imagine a 2,000 person town. They can't imagine a 20,000 person county. They can't. It's 2,000 people. As you could throw a rock and hit 2,000 people with that rock in most of Southern California. So it's just amazing. Again, the challenges of leadership when 1 out of 10 people within driving distance attends your church. That's an amazing thing. And for you to have this heart for growth instead of saying, well, we're the biggest, we're the fastest growing. We're like, no, we see potential and we're going after it. Chad, you're a good guy.
Well, I tell you, and I didn't see the potential. I really didn't. Yeah. I'll be honest with you, because I've been here 20 years, and I think in year 7, I was ready to move on. Our church had grown to about 200. So we had wonderful growth from 19 people to 200 people. And once I reached about 200, 250, I was ready to move on.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking at West Branch like a stair step into something bigger. And it's funny you mentioned California, because I did receive a call from a church in San Diego area, and they were wanting me. They had offered me the job to be the pastor, multi-million-dollar building. I'm going. It's like, do I even need to pray about this? I'm like, this is an open door. I'm going.
Not in February. You don't need to pray about anything in February. You get that
exactly.
Maybe June, but not February.
And my wife said, she says, Chad, I don't really feel like we're supposed to move. And I'm like, shut up.
Yeah.
Who asked you?
Yeah. I'm the spiritual leader of this home.
But I tell you what, when I was offered that position, I did not sleep at all that night. I mean, not 1 minute. I didn't sleep. I just tossed and turned. I had no peace.
Yeah.
And I was terrified that I was going to wake up and in 5 years, I was going to still be here. Mm-hmm. That's the thoughts. I mean, I had tormenting thoughts. Yeah. And I was terrified that God was asking me to stay here long term. Mm-hmm. I just didn't see what the church could become.
Right.
But you know what? Make a long story short, I'm glad I stayed.
Yeah.
We're glad you did too.
Yeah. I'm glad I stayed. God is so blessed, and we're so thankful.
We're glad that you're in our state. Chad, you said something there that we're going to go off track here just a little bit. You talked about the role Angie played in that decision making. And you and I have had conversations, quite a few actually, in the last 8 years. And we've talked about how God uses our spouses to speak to us so often. And I don't know that we value or we understand that in the big picture. I think Jim and I and you, we've seen that in operation with our wives. We know many times they know the will of the Lord before we do.
Right.
And I just wanted to jump off on that real quick and just encourage those of you who are listening and watching today. You know, if God is calling you to do something, you're married and God is calling you to do something, he's also going to speak to your spouse.
Right.
And there needs to be that unity and that together approach, unified approach to saying yes to that opportunity or no to that opportunity. I feel like it's not just when it relates to like a next season of life. Sometimes our spouses have insight into what's actually going on in our church, right? And we're so busy in the day to day, and they look at it and they say, "Hey, Chad," or "Hey, Jim, are you seeing what I'm seeing here?" I mean, am I making that up, or do you feel like that's right on the money?
That's absolutely accurate. And it's been like that from the beginning. Our whole ministry, even all the way back into college. My wife's discernment has just been incredible. And it's amazing, even myself, how many times she has, she's like a rumble strip on the side of the highway. When I start getting off course, that noise and it just pulls me, get back in line. Not that she's, not that Angie's, she wants to be in the will of God. She prays, I want to be in the will of God. But I'm amazed how many times God has used her in my life to confirm something. And it's just been ongoing for, 25 years. We've been married 25 years and it's just been incredible.
There's that thought that, God says it's good. And then he sees man alone and goes, that's not good. First time God says those words in scripture, that's not good. So he makes a helper. And we've observed here, he didn't make another part. He made a counterpart. So different, but in that difference, a completion, that would, if I needed help mowing the lawn, God would have made a son. He would have made a brother, but I didn't. I needed someone who was completely different, body, soul, and spirit, and yet had this ability to connect to me so that I've got this, this partnership. Man, learning to trust each other's voice in marriage and in ministry, it's hard. I mean, we brought a lot of baggage. My wife and I both brought all of our baggage with us into marriage. I'm a D, ex-cop. If you don't have their attention, speak louder. She's this abused child that turtles and hides when someone raises their voice. We both brought those bags. We loved each other, but we brought all of our luggage with us on the honeymoon and learned in the first year of marriage that although we loved each other, our weaknesses didn't play well together. And like you're saying, that those decades of learning to trust the other one's voice, learning to trust the other one's heart, getting rid of the bags because you love them more than you love the bags. Right. It's a diabolical genius that God created a woman for a man. It's so inescapable because I can selfishly look in the mirror and say, I'm all right. But if I hurt her, I can't look in the mirror anymore. I gotta change. I love her more than me. And then God gives you kids, grandkids. Don't get me started. But I'm glad you brought that out, John, because I think that's a good word for everybody. If God gave you a spouse, that spouse's heart is just as engaged in this thing as yours, and listening to them, slow down, speed up, be careful, don't do it, do it. Those voices are very important.
Yes, they are. So Chad, thank you for all of that. And now we want to get into the real reason we wanted to interview you.
Yeah.
And I think we're only going to be able to get to this question, and there's maybe a few sub questions under it. And then if you don't mind, we'd like to have you record another podcast with us.
Sure. Be glad to.
Yeah. So Chad, here's the question that we really want to drill down on with you. We talk on this podcast a lot about rhythms, work rhythms, rest rhythms. And I think we sound like a broken record sometimes. And Jim and I were doing a pod a few back saying, I think it was 4 signs you might be out of rhythm. And I mentioned this good friend of mine who pastors this wonderful church up north, who has this 550 approach to work.
Right.
Can you tell us about that? I've been fascinated about it since you told me about that a few years ago. Can you explain that to us? What is the 550 approach that you use to work?
Sure. I have always read and studied material that would help me to get better as a person, as a leader, time management, all of those things. I mean, we all want to improve in those things. And I came across a man named Brandon Bouchard. He's very well known. He's a motivational speaker. He's kind of like a Brian Tracy, a John Maxwell, just really strong in leadership. And I came across a teaching of his called the 550s. Mm-hmm. And this material, and it really has transformed how I work as a pastor. And the 550s, really all it is it's a 50-minute time block that you work in that 50 minutes without any distractions, no disruptions, and you use the timer on your clock or your phone, and you set it for 50 minutes, you push start, and you work the entire time that is happening. So many times you and I get distracted by a text message, or we get distracted by an email, or somebody will come in, and we're more reactive to things than we are proactive. And this really helped me to be clear in the focus of the day of what I was working on. And so I set up 550s, and then I take a 10-minute break in between those 50s. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I can work for a good solid hour, 50 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And still be clear in my mind, have energy. But when I get to an hour, past an hour, I start yawning. I start just getting a little, so I've learned that with the 50 minutes, and then take a 10-minute, I'll stand up, walk around the office, get some tea, get some coffee, get some water, interact with somebody on staff, whatever I need to do, and then go back to my office and do it again. And I will set 50 minutes, and I will know exactly what I want to use those 50s for.
Yeah, that's important too.
Yeah. And I will literally focus. So instead of trying this for a few minutes and then get out work on that, I just focus. It's like laser focused.
Right.
And then I get up and stretch and walk around and do it again. So I will do 5 of those as much as I can at work. And I work the whole time, and it's absolutely transformed my work. I'm never behind for the most part. I get so much done, and it's really transformed my ministry, my life.
Chad, how long have you been doing the 550s?
I've been doing them now about, I'd say 4 or 5 years. Okay.
Those of you who are listening and watching, I want you to hear what Chad just said. He's the pastor of a growing church. And for the last 4 to 5 years, he's been using this focused, laser-focused approach to work. And his church has gotten healthier. It has reached more people for Jesus. They're discipling people. And I think, Chad, I think part of the reason why is because of how focused you are. Mm. And I am amazed at how much time leaders waste because they don't have a game plan going into their day. They work on whatever kind of crosses their desk, or whoever's knocking on their door, whoever screams the loudest, and they're working 60 hours a week, but they're not achieving anywhere near the level of productivity you are. Right. Because of the focus of it. It's like the power of a laser is the focus of the beam, right? And so I want those of you who love this podcast, listen to this podcast, I want you to hear that, because your life will be measurably better if you adopt something like this and you focus on the most important things, no distractions, shut the phone off, shut the door. Nobody comes in during that 50 minutes, and for 50 minutes, you're focused on one thing. I mean, it's just powerful. And that's like a mantra for me. And now we've got somebody on the podcast who's living this out, and still he's not a workaholic, and he's growing a wonderful church.
Yeah.
And that makes me extremely excited. And I want that for everybody who's listening.
Right.
Jim, do you want to push up on that just a little bit?
Well, I think the questions that I have, and I think I probably know the answer, is that I would guess that on Monday in this 50, you always do this during that time. And then Tuesday on the third 50 is where you found it's best to do that. Is that right? So it isn't, I've got a list of 25 things to do and I just put them in somewhere, but you get a rhythm even within that rhythm. So I'm most creative in the morning, or I'm most creative in the afternoon. You know that. So you don't have to put your sermon writing at the wrong time. You put it at the best time. And how many of your 550s are already filled in before you step out onto the field to play for that week?
Yeah, I mean, I will even, it's not so, to me, it's not even so much about the 550s. You could do 350s. You could do 650s. I don't want people to get stuck on the 550s because this does not refer to meetings. This isn't talking about staff meetings. This is me working alone.
That's right.
550s every day. I do a lot of I do a lot of meetings, so this wouldn't include that because I'll work 9 hours a day doing a lot of work, but I try to make sure that I'm at least doing 550s alone, where I'm by myself.
Very good.
And I'm going whatever I'm doing. I've actually several years ago I wrote a book, Living at the Summit, Reaching New Heights, and using this. I don't write at your guys' level, but I did write a book and sold a lot of them here in the church, and we actually ran a whole class here using. There's nothing like that when you write a book and then you have a class in your church where there's
pretty cool.
people studying your material in this class.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So good to me. But I had to use this structure to be able to write, to be able to do sermons, I had to do a 50-minute, actually I did 2 50-minute time blocks preparing for this meeting right here with you guys.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, just preparing, thinking through, organizing thoughts, and just really being more laser focused. And that's what I love about the 550s. Yeah. It's called, I don't mean to interrupt you. It's called the 550. But you could, maybe you guys are in meetings all day and maybe you can only do 350s.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But I've learned that the 50 minutes though is really important to work in those segments.
Yeah. I think it's a great place to start, but you can say, actually, my attention span really starts to drain after 45 minutes. So make it 45, 15, whatever. I think people need what they need. But if everything we do as leaders is reactionary versus proactionary, there's a good chance that by the end of my workday, I will not have accomplished the most important things that I was supposed to do because I didn't make them a priority. I didn't write down when I was going to accomplish them. I didn't limit the distractions, to a reasonable amount. So I think it's the genius of this is it gives you a pattern. And from that pattern, I think you get certain permissions, right? Hey, can I meet with you Thursday at 2:00? I'm sorry, that's in the middle of my workday. I have my Thursday afternoon 50 is during that time, Well, and I didn't work.
My staff here has gotten so used to it that when they come into my office, they will ask me, "Are you in the middle of a 50?"
Yeah, love it.
And so it's just even terminal. Now my some of the staff members are using it. I've taught our new interns. You really, at least for me, and I know everybody you discover what systems work for you. Yeah. This has worked really well for me. And I will use it the rest of my life.
Right on. Well, I think we're getting up against it.
Yeah, we're up against time, Jim. Why don't you wrap us up? And Chad, we're going to pick up where we left off, and we'll be recording Pod 137 with you here in just a
because I think that as good as this has been, there's actually another thing that he does that's better than this, that wraps it up, and that is how you structure your time, not only at work but at home. And we're going to come back to that next week. So as always, our dear watchers and listeners, we love you guys. We would love to be a part of your story any way we can. If we can serve you, we can help you, we can connect you. That is what we would enjoy doing. So John, if they wanted to say, I want to talk more about this, what would be that thing that they would have to do to continue this conversation with you?
Jim, it's super simple. Just go to convergecoach.com and select the contact us link, and you fill out a form, and that gives you an opportunity to have 30 minutes with us for free. And we'll try to get you going in a good direction. You may decide you want to work with us a little bit more, or you might think, hey, after 30 minutes, I'm good. Or you might think, John, you're not hitting the nail on the head with me. Do you have somebody else that can work with us? And we're happy to either lead you to one of our other teammates or even another ministry that might be more effective for you. Right
on. So I appreciate that. I've always loved that about Converge, that it's not, the relationship starts with a gift. It's always you. The first time we met, you walked in my office and gave me a book as a gift. And I hired you, I think, on the spot to be my coach at that day because of, that was one of the reasons. So there was a connection, but there was also an immediate heart that was felt that this is a generous ministry, and they're here to give something to me, not take something from me. So speaking of which, Chad, thanks for giving to us today.
Yes. Kind
of some insight into your leadership world. And we look forward to it again. This is what, pod 136, right? So we're looking at pod 137, 1 week from today. So be listening. I'm going to wear the exact same shirt just because I'm that excited about next week as well. You guys should do the same. So live long, prosper. God bless you as you continue to lead from alignment.